It's CJ!
That's me, CJ the Lego guy. Stay tuned to the end of the video for a couple of funny thoughts that I had that I forgot to include in the main video. But with that, let's jump right into the main video. Hey everyone, I'm CJ and we're here with another Ahsoka episode breakdown review. Before we actually get started with the video, I just wanted to say that I hope you're all doing well. And whether or not you enjoyed the episode, write down your thoughts, comments, and opinions down in the comment section down below, for I'd love to hear your feedback on the episode. And if you like this video, consider dropping a like as well, for your help is always very much appreciated. But with that aside, let's get right on to this week's episode of Ahsoka, Chapter 7, Dreams and Madness. And right away from the episode's title, I don't know if it was just me, but for a penultimate episode, I was hoping for this episode to be very well in theme with the title, but it seemed to me that it clearly wasn't. But that's not a completely bad thing. And just to break the ice, I thought that it was a very good and enjoyable episode. Granted, I will say that I agree with the valid point a lot of people have in which, although this was a decent episode, because it was the penultimate episode, it didn't feel as great and as grand as it probably should have been, since a penultimate episode usually builds up on the hype that leads into the finale. But to reiterate, overall, I thought it was a very decent episode. But with that, let's get right on to the episode review. It was really interesting to open up with the Senate hearing in the New Republic building in Coruscant, with Hera's hearing when she's being reprimanded for her actions in the previous episodes in front of the council. And the Star Wars politics is always interesting to see, especially now in this era between the OT and the sequel trilogy, in the unease whether or not the Empire was coming back or not, and seeing the differences between people like Senator Zayano, who's on the side of brushing aside anything to do with any notions of the Empire secretly coming back, and of course Hera and Mon Mothma's side of being overly cautious and prepared for said imminent threat when they show up at their front door, as naturally the resulting conflict leads into the sequel trilogy and the First Order coming into power. But I just thought that this scene encapsulated all of that interest within the public interest when it comes to the threat of the looming secret empire that is coming overhead. And before Hera can be court-martialed, I thought it was very interesting. Like, who knew or who anticipated C-3PO would come in clutch for the win to help out Hera and Tiva and all the others too. And it was really, really nice to see Anthony Daniels come back to reprise his role as C-3PO. It's always such a great surprise and a very heartwarming sensation whenever 3PO's back in Star Wars. And since I have them on screen, I love the light tan jackets and outfits for both Tiva and Hera in this scene. It looked pretty cool, and not gonna lie, I would totally love to wear this outfit if this was a real purchasable set that you can buy. Also, I thought it was pretty funny Chopper getting all riled up during the meeting. Thought that was hilarious. It was super awesome that when we come back to Ahsoka doing her training routines, we see her listening to the recorded holograms of Anakin from the Clone Wars. So naturally, it's always so great to have Hayden back. And it was so cool to finally hear the dialogue from his speech in Tales of the Jedi being spoken through Hayden. And it was just so incredibly cool. And then name-dropping Count Dooku, Grievous, and especially especially Asajj Ventress in live action as well. And I can't reiterate this enough, but seeing Hayden Christensen in the Clone Wars Anakin outfit is just so amazing. Like, it's still so surreal that he's in that outfit. Such an icon and just so amazing. It is pretty emotional that Ahsoka holds on to these recordings as it's her last glimpse at Anakin before the dark turn that was struck upon him, as the last time she saw him was just before everything changed for the worse. And I saw a theory that said that it would be kind of cool if she was holding onto these recordings and eventually showed Luke the recordings of his father and could use that for his own training for him and his new recruits at his Jedi Temple. But with that aside, it was really great to see that little character moment for Ahsoka. But when we cut back to the action, as soon as the Purgles jump out of intergalactic hyperspace, they run into a minefield of all these Imperial bombs out in space. And it was like, no wonder there's a entire ring of dead corpses around the planet of Aldia. It's so insane the way that all the mines were just seeking out the whales. That was so crazy. and naturally they all jumped back to the other galaxy. And it was a cool action scene with Ahsoka and Huyang outmaneuvering these bombs as they try to make it to the planet's surface. Not gonna lie, I thought it was really funny that after Thrawn had asked Elsbeth for all the history on Ahsoka so he can study her, that he got kind of either excited or nervously worried in a sense when she found out that Anakin was her master. Like, he almost seemed excited to take on that challenge, but also apprehensive in the sense of he was kind of getting that sensation that he needs to be extremely more cautious than before, knowing that fact. But naturally, with Thrawn being the tactician he is, he sets up his plan to take on Ahsoka and the other heroes. Which, when we cut back to them, it was pretty nice to see Sabine and Ezra just chilling out with the other little hermit people, and them reminiscing on past events, and Sabine catching Ezra up on the last years of Star Wars lore. It was just nice to see the character dynamics and the chemistry behind both actors as well. I thought that was really great and brought the scene that extra sense of development and enjoyment. The scene in which Ahsoka connects with Sabine through the Force and space Skypes her was pretty interesting too. And it was also an interesting little thing that although Sabine isn't very prominent in the Force, she could still briefly connect with Ahsoka, which I know a lot of people had issues with that, and I was trying to decide whether or not I did as well, but I just thought of it as that discussion that a lot of people have, including myself, in which although Sabine can use the Force at a very minimalistic level just in terms of her heightened sense abilities, much like how anyone can, such as Han Solo, that it just makes sense that with her personal connection with Ahsoka, that's the reason why Ahsoka was able to connect with her. Not because Sabine is technically a Force user, but because a Grand Force user like Ezra and Ahsoka are so deeply connected with people that since Ahsoka was very much attempting to establish that connection, that she managed to pick up on Sabine. And it would make more sense for her to connect to Sabine as to Ezra since they do have that master-student connection. I thought that made sense to me in some level of sense. Balin's whole discussion with Shin can very much be its own video, which I'm considering whether or not to do that. But it was so cool to see that when Shin reached the figurative crossroads of destiny, whether she would follow the bandits and continue her original goal of just becoming a part of the Empire and not realizing that would lead her into becoming a tool and completing her mission, or staying with her master Balin to seek out power in a different sense and continue her philosophical training with Balin. And especially when Balin drops this line, "Impatience for victory will guarantee defeat." And me as a starting out YouTuber, that hit me really hard. But yeah, his words is completely sound, as we see later that Shin's impatient to beat her enemies is what results in her defeat at their hands. And it was really cool to see that Balin showed a level of remorse and compassion for his apprentice, as he knew that Shin was going to pick the path that she chose in the episode. But it was still cool to see that Balin still gave her that choice to choose her path, where you could totally tell that he wanted her to join him, but he already knew from the get-go which path she would choose, and he was completely fine with letting her go. And I thought that sense was so great. The writing behind that, the acting between both of the actors, especially Ray Stevenson. And of course, this ties back into the previous life lesson between Anakin and Ahsoka, live or die, in which we all have a choice, and depending on that choice, that decides not only our fate, but the path that our goals head towards. And I thought that was a really great part of the episode. And I feel like this part right here, a lot of people can agree, is the best part of the episode overall. When we go back to the action, I thought it was really funny that these little hermit people were using slingshots, and like, yo, that's classic. Not only, of course, because they're scavengers and they would use primitive tools and weapons like this, but the fact that, of course, Ezra would teach them to use his very first weapon too, it just makes sense, and it's almost like a full circle moment with his character. I thought that was really funny. Just a Sabine, just a Sabine appreciation post, since she is super cool in these action scenes, and especially when Ezra joins in the fight as well. Something I found out recently in an Instagram post that I saw, I didn't know that the aerial combat in Ahsoka, all the ships were made using models. I thought they were all digital assets, but I didn't know that they actually used models to do the dogfighting in these Star Wars episodes. And I thought that was super awesome because it connects the digital age of the modern Star Wars storytelling with the classic practicality of the original trilogy. And I thought that was super amazing, and it elevated the Ahsoka experience for me in a sense. And now that you know, did it do the same for you? Let me know in the comment section down below. Or you can let me know if I'm wrong, if not all dogfights are practical effects. And then we get the fight reunion between Ahsoka and Baylan, which was really cool. Not only are their stances like super awesome, but naturally Baylan is surprised that Ahsoka's still alive. And she finally pulls out both lightsabers because she knows she's going to need all the power that she needs for this fight. And I was pretty certain that was going to happen anyway, since now both of them have to fight at their full potential. And Baylan taking this stance, my brother pointed out that he's very much medieval themed, and it was just so awesome just to see that because it's super dope for his character. But this also made me question whether or not his original lightsaber form is Makashi, or is it one of the other lightsaber forms, or just a new modern modified lightsaber form. Who knows? But we all know that this fight was super cool. Short, unfortunately, but still pretty awesome, especially with Ahsoka just dominating Baylan, well, with her using both lightsabers to fend him off and then just jabbing him with her elbows. That was pretty cool. And now here's the part a lot of people had issues with. Ezra not taking the lightsaber, which I will admit it would have been cool to see Ezra pick up the lightsaber and be rusty with it to fight off the night troopers. But I have to be honest, it's completely in his character to not take the lightsaber, since he's been without it for years and he's very much in tune with the Force. I feel like he's always been more in tune with the Force than actual lightsaber combat, especially when we have his green lightsaber being the confirmation that he's more in tune with the Force than being a strict lightsaber duelist. It just made me feel like it was completely in his character to not take the lightsaber in this scene, since he has full confidence in the Force and he can rely on it. Granted, he is a Force wielder and he knows that Sabine, not being one, would definitely benefit from using the lightsaber, since he knows that her mixed combat of blaster and lightsaber combination would benefit her in this fight. And man, as much as I wanted to see the fight continue, it naturally had to come in an end, as this fight was just a throwaway fight, both in story and out story, as I do believe that Ahsoka and Baylan knew that this little sparring match was nothing more than that, and it wasn't going to be a fight with a conclusion, since both characters don't really want to ever fight each other when they encounter each other, since Baylan just wants to do his own thing and Ahsoka doesn't want to fight him unless if it's necessary, which I feel like it's how they both feel whenever they interacted with each other, which is also a nice little level to both of their characters as well. At first, I thought it was really goofy when Ezra tried to roll a nat 20 on diplomacy, but then I remembered that that's also in his character too, being a full Force wielder and just being him. I always thought that Ezra always wanted to distract the enemy in the attempt to deter the danger before he could figure out a plan to take them all out. I thought that was pretty interesting. I know a lot of people didn't like this part as well, but I thought that this was still a cool little thing for Ezra to do in the story. Granted, all the night troopers definitely could have shot them both, but that little hesitation thing was just more Rebels humor in my opinion. Plus, not gonna lie, I thought for a second that when his plan didn't work, I thought he was gonna be like, okay, and then force freeze everyone in the area. But it was still pretty cool for Ahsoka to come in for the win and then all three of them take on the squad. Still cool, nevertheless. I thought it was super funny that Ezra was like, no, I'm not going to use a lightsaber nor a blaster. The Force is my ally. And then he just goes in guns blazing. Thought that was super funny. And it was really cool seeing him use his like Force martial arts moves as well. Granted, it would have been cooler to see how all the fight choreography would have been if Nick Gillard was still doing all the choreography for modern Star Wars, but it was still pretty cool and I still enjoyed the fight scene. It was just really funny for Ezra to just grab a blaster and start blasting. And I will say that I never expected for the Night Sister or the Night Troopers to puff up into smoke afterwards. I just assumed that they were all zombies. Granted, I wish they didn't speak at all, but I always feel like these are more like reanimated troopers that were just brought into this planet, and they wouldn't be invincible at all. They would just be brought back, you know. I don't know. Maybe I'm just like rambling, but I just feel like these night troopers aren't the grand kind of zombie reanimated troopers as we all thought, that they're just brought back for a second outing just to get wiped out again. Whether or not that's bad or not, write it down in the comment section down below. It was just incredible that another great part of the episode was just seeing Thrawn and his tactical ways of combat. Since we saw a little bit of that in Rebels, but particularly here, it was pretty great as well. I thought it was pretty interesting that Elsbeth didn't see the full picture until Thrawn explained it, that although they technically lost the battle against the Force wielders, that they still won in the grand scheme of things, since Thrawn was really just wasting as minimal resources as he could in order to gain the time he needed to fuel his real plan of shipping all the cargo into the Star Destroyer. So that way, by the time that they're all set to head on out and the heroes manage to gain their footing again, it's time for Thrawn and his forces to leave. And just like Thrawn said, Ahsoka lost the very thing that she tried so desperately to fight, which is time. And we all know, especially out of story, when it comes to the things that we want to do in life, time is the greatest enemy of all and the most deadliest adversary to beat when it comes to achieving your goal. We jump back to Shin and we see the result of her chosen path that Balin predicted, that she was just going to end in defeat, and not only that, now she'll be alone. And the theory is going around whether or not she's going to convert to the light side or not, or she's just going to give up on everything. But it was interesting to see that Ahsoka the White still handed her hand out to help her. And Shin now, after choosing her path, is now confused as to what she does from here on out. But we'll just have to wait and see for the finale to see what ends up with her character, because I really hope that her character arc just doesn't stop here, because that would be terrible if her character just drops out of nowhere here. I thought it was really great to see all of our characters and heroes reunited once again, knowing that they've achieved their goal to find Ezra, and now all they need to do is just bring everyone back home. And although it was a valid point for people to bring up whether or not Sabine is forgiven for her actions that led to this, and whether or not she's scot-free or not, but I feel like whether or not they bring it back up of Ahsoka scolding her for doing so, it led to this moment of a sense of victory, in the sense of they managed to achieve their personal goals of bringing and finding Ezra. And since Ahsoka went through her journey in the world between worlds, she must have been able to forgive Sabine, as without all the actions that happened, she wouldn't have gone through her journey. And now Sabine going through her own journey as well, in the introspective level of things. And it goes back to that writing trope of, if a character is written to do something that causes a cascade of different bad things to happen, in order for the characters to go through a developmental journey, then by all means that adds to the story. Whether or not we like the bad things that had happened, it still adds on to the characters and the development too. Not saying that anyone should be forgiven for the bad things that they do in the brief moments of reaction time that they would have in deciding those actions. For everyone should still be held accountable for their actions, both good and bad. It's just whether or not, when it comes to fiction or real life, it's how we go about letting the right and the wrong, depending on said situations, and how we feel going forwards to the person in question, whether or not we can oversee their misdoings or not. It's all a mishmash of letting things go, holding things accountable, and all these crazy mixed up feelings that we have with our journeys with the people in our lives. As soon as it came onto this scene of Ezra being like, I think I'm ready to go home and stuff like that, I was like, no, it's gonna end here. No, please don't let the episode end. No! I thought that was just super funny. But I did see a funny theory, or at least like a theory that I hope is very much untrue, that fictional characters that always say, I'm ready to go home, or I can't wait to be back to my normal life, ends up dying in the end, which I really hope doesn't happen to Ezra, because that would be tragic. But yes, with that, the episode comes to a close, and with not too many things happening, we shall see what happens next in the Ahsoka Season 1 finale, which I'm pretty sure we're getting a Season 2, but still, it's a very worrisome feeling that we have no idea what to anticipate in the finale, since there is no cliffhanger in this episode. And hopefully it's not like the Season 3 Mando finale. Well, with it being pretty cool but lackluster, but I'm pretty sure Ahsoka, with Dave Filoni in charge, is definitely gonna have a pretty great impact with the finale. Hopefully. But yes, with that, this video also comes to an end. And what an interesting episode. Granted, it was still pretty decent, but not a grand penultimate episode, which is a valid point. But with all my ramblings aside, what did you think about the episode overall and the points that I had to make? What with the discussion between the way that the characters are reacting to each other, Balin's speech with Shin, the whole talk about misdoings and doing the right thing when it came to the discussion between Sabine and Ahsoka just a few moments ago. Let me know all your thoughts and comments and concerns and opinions down below in the comment section of the video, for I would love to hear all your opinions, especially on my ramblings as well. And we can get this Ahsoka discussion going, especially as the week leads into the finale. But what do you all think? And if you enjoyed the video, consider dropping a like as well. And if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and checking out some of my other content here too. But with that, I'll catch you all in the next video, especially for the Ahsoka Season 1 finale. But with that, I'm CJ, and I'll catch you next time. And I hope that you all continue to have a great day as well. Bye-bye for now. As a man with curly hair too, I sure do really like Ezra's design. It's being so cool. I mean, look at her. She's so awesome.